I remember when I first pitched the idea of Blexit, people thought that I was crazy, that there was never going to be a possible way to wake up Black America, to bring Black America and white America back together. And I remember thinking, it's so easy, actually, if you simply reverse engineer what the left has done, right? How did they do it? How did a girl like me, I'm quite bright, come out of high school and actually believe that conservatives were racist and had the worst hearts and wanted to send Black America back? How did I come out of high school thinking that and believing that? And the truth is that I was taught that, right? If you get the answers right, that is what you're learning in school. LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, is taught to be a hero because he inked the Civil Rights Bill in 1964. People go, oh, he saved Black America. This Democrat president saved Black America. And they leave out all of the portions of the fact that he was an avowed racist. He used the N-word all the time. He was proud to be a racist, and that he said, in no uncertain terms, that he would have those N-words voting Democrat for the next 200 years. These are facts. You can look them up, right? So we're learning a partial history. You know, I was criticized. I'm always criticized, but one of the million times that I was criticized by the left, it was because they said that I was popularizing the idea of a plantation. They didn't like that rhetoric. They didn't like the idea of a liberal or a progressive plantation. And they killed me, and a guy wrote a whole article about it saying that this rhetoric is racist and that conservatives should not be calling it a plantation, and it's wrong. And he had me really confused because I wasn't saying it because I thought it was a cute phrase or I thought it would get someone's attention. I said it because I meant it, right? I meant it after deeply researching and understanding how slavery worked in America, how it was able to function. What really opened my eyes to the idea of a modernized, updated plantation was actually Frederick Douglass's Autobiography. In the first couple of pages, the first chapter, he talks about what it was like being a slave, and he says something that sent a chill down my spine. He said that he felt nothing when his mother died. He felt nothing when his sisters died. Because of the system of slavery was constantly moving people around, one of the things that held that system together was the breakdown of family, right? Remove that familial connection, that thing that you're supposed to be so center and important in our lives. The breakdown of family was central to slavery. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, because if you're talking about the breakdown of family, and I'm sure Larry Elder or Dinesh has said this already tonight, but look at the experiment of Black America today, right? A group of individuals who, in the 1960s, when Patrick Moynihan issued his report, they were shocked. They said there's an epidemic going on because 23% single motherhood rate in the Black community, 23% of Black children are growing up without a father in the home, an epidemic. Today that number is more like 77%, right? From the 1960s to today, think about that, the family breakdown. And then I think, okay, but it's not just like we're seeing it in the category of welfare incentivization, or that it's just focused on Black America. They've widened it, right? Suddenly now we have Black Lives Matter. You can go explicitly to their website, and they state explicitly that they want to dismantle the nuclear family. Think about that. Billions and billions of dollars going to an organization that is not even hiding what they're after. And by the way, to this day, nobody can answer this question. When you log on to Black Lives Matter and you donate $1, where does the money go? It's a huge mystery. It's like a hole, right? I think we know where it goes. We don't know, but we know, right, where it goes. Billions of dollars they raise using Black faces, right? Look over here, Breonna Taylor. Look over here, George Floyd. Quick, get your dollars out. The only way to stop this is to donate, and nobody knows where it goes. There's no Black Lives Matter college campus. There's no Black Lives Matter office building. There's no, I mean, is it possible? What is the employee structure? What is the corporate structure? You've raised billions. Where is the money going? It's a mystery. We know what their goals are, the breakdown of family, and this isn't the only system. Let's not just put the whole onus on Black Lives Matter. And then I said, well, Another thing that seems to be after the breakdown of family is the radicalized feminist movement, right? I'm probably one of the proudest non-feminists in America. You have women running around telling other women that they don't need men, that is a token of your security in life, that you don't need men. The good news is that biology will take those people out, right? I mean, it's not going to end well, right? We don't have to fight that too hard, okay? That they'll finish themselves off eventually with that mentality. But what an idea to tell little girls that there's something fundamentally wrong with being a woman in general. We've seen this attack on femininity, right? It's like the uglier you can get, the more points you earn in the world of feminism. Shave your head, dye it purple, right? Wear baggy clothes, don't shower. This is like progressivism unleashed, right? The grimier you can look, then you're sticking it to the man, the patriarchy. But at the same time, feminism also says that the height of feminism is taking your clothes off, right? Right? Cardi B and WAP, right? That's the #1 song. You can laugh. It's the #1 song. There are girls on the internet doing this dance, popping on the ground, wearing less clothes. This is the direction that culture is going, because you know what? We also celebrate promiscuity now, is what radical feminism is about. Sex should mean nothing. It's okay if you want to have sex. It means this is it. This is liberation. Let me tell you something. If you think that the only way to make it in life you have to take your clothes off, you are not free. You are in bondage, okay? That is not freedom. And by the way, if you needed me to say it, by the way, if you think you're winning because you want to free the nipple, one of the many radical feminist campaigns, take your clothes off and be naked, and you think men are going to be upset about that, the patriarchy might be winning, okay? They might be winning. You have girls that are pretending that this is progressive, right? You shouldn't aspire to marriage, but you should aspire to sexual promiscuity. The radical feminism. And what are they after at the end of the day? The breakdown of family, right? They want you to think that you're going to be happy at the end of the day if you stay away and you don't value these things, if you don't value yourself and have respect and want to look for a man that respects and values you. Let me tell you something. There has never been a country in the history of the world that has survived without strong men, right? Value masculinity, right? And that push, that radical feminist movement is also seeping in to men, and suddenly testosterone and masculinity is wrong, right? Gillette commercial, don't let the 3-year-olds wrestle, right? That's just toxic masculinity, whatever that means, right? Made up phrases. The left is very good at making up phrases, right? They sound very important and they mean nothing, right? Men being men, showing any signs of manhood is suddenly wrong. And I look and I do these college campuses and something's happening. There is something weird happening. I see these skinny little boys come up. They're not standing up straight, you know? And I have a question. How could you possibly say, Candace Owens, that you don't see the horror of Ben Shapiro, you know? And I'm thinking, how old are you? And he'll say to me, I'm 20, you know? And I'm thinking, wow, a couple of generations ago, let me tell you, you are not the 20-year-old that could have ended World War II, okay? Something is happening. And that should scare everybody. That should scare everybody to think that just a few decades ago, the average age of those boys that landed on the beaches of Normandy, an absolute horror show. If you can make it without crying through watching, and I shouldn't say Netflix, as you should have canceled it by now, but maybe some of you saw, they did the World War II in color. They put together a documentary, and they went through all of the video and the clips, and they colorized it, and it did something different when you could see the faces of these boys. Now, I'm not just talking about the American boys. Right? They did this documentary so well that you cried for the Japanese boys, you cried for the young German boys, you realized how young they were, right? You cried for the American boys, you cried for the British boys because you realized, my goodness, right? This war was fought by men that were 18 to 20 years old on average. Think about that, right? And there was a survivor of Omaha Beach, and he's talking, and he starts crying, and he starts talking about how on the boat over in Omaha, it was just bad luck of the draw. The worst beach you could have landed on would have been Omaha, and the Americans got that beach. And he's talking about how in the water on the way there, it was so choppy going across the channel that they were all just vomiting on the way there, and some of them were crying, saying, I'm never going to see my mother again. It was the same, when they were talking about the Japanese boys who were told that they had to kill themselves, and they were just crying because they were basically ordered to commit suicide, and they were terrified. And I'm sitting here and I'm crying watching this thing and realizing, and the armored ships dropped too soon, which allowed so many of them to just be killed, and they still ran, and they were using one another's dead bodies to shield themselves. And the average age was 22 years old on that beach. And I just think, my goodness, right? We had these people that you would think should be boys, should be home with their parents, and they were going to save Western civilization, right? And then you fast forward to today, and you have kids, boys the same age, literally crying outside of my events because I'm being handed a microphone. Like, that is the peak of their suffering right there, right? Like, oh my God, Candace Owens is coming to speak, and it's incredible. It's incredible, right? And this is what happens when there is this attack on masculinity. These boys wouldn't know what to do with the screwdriver if you handed it to them and gave them 3 days to figure it out, right? I mean, and it's pathetic, and it's sad. It's sad because they're being encouraged that you shouldn't want to do these sorts of things. Like, if, you shouldn't want to be able to put things together. You need to talk about your feelings. You need to talk about this. You need to talk about that. And I'm looking at this culture, and I say, that right there, the attack on manhood, telling women to be men, telling men to act like women. And what is it about? The breakdown of family and the breakdown of society. And then we have the LGBT push, right? And I'm sorry, I know there's more letters. I don't care to memorize them. What, LGBTQRSPUV? I don't know what's going on, okay? Every day we wake up and they tack on another letter, and they want us to learn a new word, intersectional. I mean, I'm done with the leftist vocabulary. But we get to the T, because that's the most important part, right? To me, right now, today, this push, and I have been outspoken against this, and you say, why? Why is the thing like bathroom signs? Do we really need to do that? Do we need to have a debate about bathroom signs? And yes, they're offended because this says women and this says men, but I'm not women or man. I'm intersex, I'm this, I'm that. And then you hear that they're pushing this agenda in the school system, telling children they can pick their genders. Trevor Noah, a few days ago, came out and said gender reveal parties should be a thing of the past because your child will tell you what gender they are. Now, about to be a parent, not one yet, but I can tell you that I did nanny, and the girl was 3, and she was convinced that she was a mermaid, right? The left would have it that I should be allowing her to stay in the bath forever because she is a mermaid. There's this thing called you're the parent and they are the child, right? I mean, imagine a society where we have to allow the thoughts and add meaning to the thoughts and the reality behind what 3-year-olds think. This is what the left is after, right? And then you say, what do these things have in common? Attacked men, attack women, attack gender, attack all of these things. And the one thing that's in the middle is family, right? Because when you're encouraging children to change their genders and to go through sex change surgeries, right? The decision that they cannot reverse later in life, what you are basically saying is these kids will not be able to have offspring, right? All of these things are related to the breakdown of family. They want the family unit gone because that is the thing that has made Western civilization the strongest. The nuclear family unit is under attack in this country right now. When government becomes God, right? That is what they want. They want us to pray to government for all of the answers when there's a problem. It is why I was the most vocal person out of the gate about COVID-19. Everyone was scared left and right. Candace tweets in February, not doing this, not playing this game. I've been on a plane, I've been traveling, I've been shaking hands, I've been hugging people because I know what that is when the government starts trying to tell you how to live, okay? Fear is always the mechanism to control, right? Fear. They will say something that you just go, well, we can't possibly challenge that. And the left is great at that, by the way, right? I was one of the first people, again, left or right, and got killed by both sides. The second the Me Too hashtag started trending, I said, nope. I know what that's about. People said, how could you, Candace? This is about sexual assault. This is about rape. I said, that's the point. The left has found something that everybody's uncomfortable challenging, right? Who would want to challenge a hashtag Me Too, this happened? Who would want to be the person to say this is wrong, right? Well, me, because I believe in due process, right? And I saw this hashtag happening in the Me Too movement, and I said, this is going to be the way the left takes down any man, women that they want to in a second, because they're now removing due process, right? How simple it is to remove due process. And I talk about this in my book, but is there any community that should have been louder against the Me Too movement than Black America? Did we not learn the lesson of what happens when allegations go unchecked? Do we not remember what happened to Emmett Till? How dare we allow the left to again say, no matter what, believe women. Hashtag blanket believe women. I mean, what an absurd idea. You should never hashtag believe women. You should never hashtag believe men. You should always hashtag believe facts, okay? Believe facts. And so they find these vulnerable points, and they get more extreme every single time. And then people don't realize it until it's gone too far. Everyone's shy to say, and then suddenly you look at Brett Kavanaugh, and then you go, whoa, that happened very quickly, right? Well, now we understand what they're really after. And the answer is always power. It's always power. And the COVID-19 just came. It was just too well packaged. The timing, for me, it's like, wow, so we can't come together. We can't do this. We can't come together. We can't see one another. You're saying we all have to stay home by ourselves and rely on the mainstream media narrative to know what's going on outside. The one thing they have wanted, full control of the narrative, is exactly what you're handed when people can no longer go out and have experiences. This is what you call Plato's Allegory of the Cave, right? And for those of you that don't know that story, Plato wrote a story called The Allegory of the Cave, and it essentially says, it's a story about 3 prisoners who are hung up on a wall, and there's a fire behind them. Their entire lives, they're hung up, and they believe that the shadows on the wall are real, that this is reality. There can be no different reality, and people are putting shapes behind the fire, and they have no idea what life is outside of the cave, right? And suddenly one of them gets freed, and they go outside, and he burns his eyes. And then suddenly he starts to see reality for what it is. He sees the trees, he sees the sky, he sees everything outside. And he said, oh my goodness, what I thought was reality wasn't reality. But I have to go back and tell them. I have to go back and tell the remaining 2 prisoners of what's really outside. I've now had this experience. I understand what reality is, right? And so he goes back inside, and he tells the prisoners, and his eyes are burning, and they look at him and they say, you're crazy. Don't touch us. We don't want to be cut down. That can't possibly be true. This is reality in front of us. And they mock him and they call him crazy. And I say that allegory, which I discuss in my book, is so much of what it's like to be a Black conservative today, right? Because we've made it out of the cave. We know what reality is. The people whose hands are still tied up looking at the shadows on the cave, the shadows being created by CNN, by MSNBC, by NBC, telling them that this is what you need to fear, this is what's real, this is what you're going through. That is a lie. Get outside and step into the sunlight, right? That is the challenge as Americans, to encourage people to never allow someone else to control your narrative. And I say it all the time. You know, when I first decided that I was going to listen, just listen, not listen to a reproduction of what he said, but just listen directly to what the president said, I was shocked after watching a full speech and then going and listening to what the mainstream media turned it into, right? How could I ever trust them with any story ever again? I have to trust my experiences. The mainstream media had created for me a reality that didn't exist about conservatism. They lied. And this is not just the mainstream media. The way they've done it has been brilliant, and you have to give credit to the left where credit is due. It was Machiavellian what they did, right? First, they realized that you have to attack every pillar and every structure that makes sense to people. So they attack God, right? First and foremost, you have to remove God. You have to remove faith. This is why in the media they routinely mock Christians, right? They say there's something wrong with Christianity. You're a Jesus freak. You're a Bible gun touting. You know, this is all wrong, right? They mock that because then once you remove God, then you've got family, and they've destroyed family. And when they did that to Black America, they knew what would happen. You see, when you remove the family, when you remove anything, a vacuum exists, and something's got to fill that vacuum. Something's got to fill that hole, right? And for the Black youth, it was easy. Instead of getting that maternity and paternity inside the home, you have to pursue it somewhere else. So you pursue it on the streets. So you pursue it via culture. Suddenly you look up one day and you're taking advice from Cardi B and Jay-Z and Beyonce to tell you how you should think and how you should vote. Suddenly, Cardi B is creating the shadows on the cave for you, right? Telling you what you need to fear, and you believe it because you've lost direction, because you don't have those pillars of strength behind you, because you don't have your mother and your father around the dinner table telling you what the truth is. Right? The left understood that. What they did was brilliant, and this is why they control Hollywood. This is why they control culture. This is why Taylor Swift says it's her mission to do this and get conservatives out of office. This is why Cardi B is sitting down with Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, because that is the evil. That is the puppetry. They understand we will use these idols that have become mom and dad to control the masses, right? And then they did the last thing, which was so important. They controlled the education system, right? Everything that you learn in school, I mean, the Department of Education should be abolished. It should be abolished. The 1619 Project, handing out to kids in first grade packets about white privilege. Right? This is a serious story. I have two little girls that I used to nanny for. They're twins. They're now 16, and they attend an elite high school, private school in Manhattan. And they are conservative, and they told me that on the first day of school, they're introduced to their safe space, right? And that they are all required to take a class, a multicultural class, where every white person is encouraged to go around the room and talk about why they feel guilty for being white, right? And I'm sitting here thinking in my head, if you ever need to know if something is racist and wrong, just switch the races, right? Would it be acceptable if you made every Black person go around in class and tell you why it was wrong that they were Black? That would be psychotic. That would be racist. So yes, it's racist when you make white kids do that too, okay? This is the game I play to decide what is right and what is wrong. When I go on to my Twitter and I see an article from BuzzFeed, the title will be, "This is why white people need to shut up." So I play the game. Would this article be racist if it said, "This is why Black people need to just shut up"? The answer is yes, it's racist, take it down, right? It's that simple. We've been led to believe that racism only works one way. No, racism is racism, okay? It is racism. And the reason it has gotten this far is not just because the mainstream media is treating Black Americans like we are toddlers, right? It's not just because they're infantilizing us and they're telling us suddenly that it's fine if you act like a baby. It's fine if you're screaming and yelling. That's normal. It's not normal. How would you like it if I came into your house and you had a toddler and he was throwing a tantrum and he was throwing things in the house and I said, that's fine, you're just expressing yourself, right? That's just a little bit of expression, right? That would be crazy. That child would burn down the house. That's exactly correct. And yet suddenly on a mass scale, grown adults are being told that even if they riot and loot, it's peaceful. It's peaceful protesting, or it's understandable protesting, right? It's all understandable protesting. But the fault is not Black America's. The fault is actually, I thought about this, and I sat down and I had a chat with Ben Shapiro, the scary one that shouldn't be on college campuses. And I said, actually, after reading Shelby Steele's White Guilt, the fault is actually on the white Americans that have felt so guilty about something they've never done, an era that they haven't lived in, and allowed this to go on, right? When people ask me, what can change? Jesus, white people, find a voice, because I would never allow my child to sit in the class and go around the room and be told there's something wrong with their skin color. I would be suing the school yesterday. I would never allow it to happen. I understand the fear. I understand the conditioning. I understand the smear and malleable of being called a racist. Trust me, no one understands it better than me. Believe it or not, I've probably been called a white supremacist more than all of you. But fear, once again, going back to my earlier point, you should never allow fear to control you, right? You should never allow fear. We understand, every person in this room understands the difference between right and wrong. The left and the right used to agree on some basic principles of right and wrong. Both sides used to understand that rioting and looting and burning down property that you don't own is wrong. That is no longer. Both sides used to understand that racism, whether it's coming from white people or it's coming from Black people, is wrong. But that has changed, right? We now have a media, we have politicians, and we have an ecosystem of people that are pretending they don't understand the difference between right and wrong. That they don't understand there's something fundamentally wrong about 10-year-olds twerking on a Netflix special, right? So it is time, as a collective, right, that I promise you that I will parent my children. I promise you that the Blexiteers in this room, that we see ourselves as the next generation of Black Americans, a proud group that see themselves as Americans first and foremost. And the challenge for white Americans is to stop seeing yourself as white Americans only, but as Americans first and foremost who understand the difference between right and wrong. And I will leave you with this, and I say it every time I'm on stage, but I learned those differences between right and wrong from my grandfather. And he is the greatest man breathing. I'm not biased. He really is. And for him, the reason why I could never take this narrative and believe and see myself as a victim is because I have a grandfather that is still breathing, who lived through real issues, who lived through real segregation, who grew up on a segregated South plantation, who grew up on a sharecropping farm, who grew up at the age of 5 years old, his first job, laying out tobacco to dry, who wasn't allowed to go to school because he had to work. He had to work the farm. He grew up with the real KKK spraying bullets inside of his home at night. And him and his brothers would run to the back of the house when they'd come around. And to this day, my grandfather, you ask him about that, and a smirk crosses his face, and with pride, he says, and my daddy would grab the shotgun and shoot back at them boys. Boys. What an insult to the legacy of the Ku Klux Klan, right? Boys, diminished, removing the power, right? Removing the power from the real racists, never seeing himself as a victim. He really speaks with such a power and a strength that I couldn't imagine being the next generation, generations off from that, and seeing myself as less than, right? the generation that ended World War II, the generation who ran to the back of the house while their daddy would grab the shotgun and shoot back at them boys. That is the culture of American values that I crave, the strength, the power, the resilience that we are all capable of in this room, right? But we have to find the strength to speak up and speak out. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If they call you a racist, so what? If you're black and they call you a white supremacist, laugh. Laugh. It's so ridiculous. Let's stop giving power to the left. Let's stop the situation that we're in today where the left is making the rules, we're playing by them, and they're playing by none. They're playing by none. Let's stop doing that. Because if we don't, we're going to wake up one day and we're not going to have a country to save, right? If you don't find your voice and realize that right now, this time in America is so critical, right? If you don't look back at past generations with pride, generations like my grandfather, who now, as a retired man, lives on that sharecropping farm, purchased it, and is the owner of it. That story, the story of my grandfather, is the American dream. The American dream that if you work hard, never once in his entire life have I ever heard my grandfather say a negative word about a white person, despite living through the horrors, right? He always just says, you know what? That was just a different time, baby. That's what he always says, just a different time, right? Because it was a different time. That is not the America that we are living in today. And how he got ahead is the same way that every person can get ahead. There's no hacks or shortcuts in life. It's very simple. What unites us all is not a skin color. It's not even a language, believe it or not. What unites us all in this room is the American philosophy. The American philosophy is that you can come to this country with the clothes on your back, barely speaking the language. But if you are willing to work hard and stay out of trouble, you can make something of yourself. That is what we fight to protect every single day. So, ladies and gentlemen, I leave you with that, to remember that the Blexit slogan is "We are the free, we the free." God bless. Thank you guys so much for having me.